Can I ask you a question? Have you ever read More's Utopia? I don't mean the second book. That's the stodgy book where he gets to Utopia. And in a sequence of jokes where Parliament is lie talk, outlines this perfect state. And it's fine. And as it's early, written 500 years ago. You would read it for that curiosity alone. That's not the book I mean, though. I mean, it's the first book. Before ever you get to Utopia. That's the great book. You see, 500 years ago, just as modernity was being laid down, we're in the early modern period, normally said to be the roots of capitalism. Just then, More gives one of the most biting critiques of capitalism. Here he exploits his position as Lord Chancellor, but also a kind of unofficial King's Jester. And it is a work, as it were, by Pearl Makejoy herself, speaking truth to power, using humour, that if you do it in the right voices, I suppose these days you would want to channel Stephen Fry, how he used to channel Monty Python, is actually very, very funny. But what he says isn't funny. And what he says isn't funny because More, with savage humour actually, identifies two traps that the early modern system was falling into. In a sense, they're one trap, but we'll come on to that to the end. The first is a system of government based on some sort of notion of ownership. States didn't have to be run well. That wasn't the point. The King of France didn't wake up every morning and say, today I'm going to make my people happy. Of course he didn't. He actually woke up and said, today I'm going to conquer Milan. And More wants to point out the idiocy of this. France, in his day, was already too big for a king to effectively govern. So why on earth would a conscientious king want to conquer Milan as well? Unless for gold and profit. And to More's character, Raphael, this is the exact opposite of what a government pretends to be. If a government is a thief, and a king is a thief, he should just say he is. But if he's trying to govern for the good of the people, he doesn't want to endlessly expand. He doesn't want to endlessly grow to augment his treasury. He needs to worry about his people. More, of course, contrasts this with a king whose power was limited, and when he inherited too much, had to give kingdoms away. He is thinking of Charles V at this point, Holy Roman Emperor. Or in our day, of course, what do governments get up to when they wake up in the morning? They wake up and think, well, I must work out how to grow the economy. Yes. Or I must cut down debt. The modern equivalents of increasing one's power and one's treasury. And of course, while they might do bankers good, in the same way that wars did bankers good 500 years ago, Raphael would immediately say, why? Does it help the people at all? Is that really all you can do after 500 years? More than that, More suggests the role of government is to spend. Because it isn't about war, it's about keeping people happy. And one way to keep people happy is to keep money moving. He suggests a system of government in Happy Land, when nobody's allowed to earn more than 10 guineas on pain of death. And it is then the role of the monarchy to keep money moving at times of hardship more than times of wealth. This system, he said, made the economy sing in Happy Land. The second main critique that is really the critique of Thomas More, coming as he does from a monkish background, is the critique of private property. Oh, Thomas More is very clear. A man ought to be able to own their own toothbrush and their own coat. Oh, and their only livelihood as well. But those rules of private property get bent when a man can own all of Lincolnshire. When he can get rid of those that lived on those fields, destroy livelihoods so that he can farm sheep, or in our day he can replace the humans with machines that make him far more money and destroy livelihoods. As long as the aim of industry is not then to produce happiness, but to produce money, to make property, and then the rich men can then spend on magnificent gestures, libraries, philanthropy, taking the money then that they stole and giving it back, sometimes according to their whim, to their people. All this, Raphael says, is just clear nonsense. It's little better than thievery in another name. Good government would be about making people happy. And that would be its sole purpose. And any other system is surely hardly government at all. It is merely a rogue of thieves who've stolen a nation to govern it and drive it as slaves. And so more would be very hard on the billionaire classes, very hard on governments that are all about deficits. Here in France, the current government, which will probably fall again quite soon, is desperately trying to persuade the French that they have to destroy their welfare state that is functioning. Why? To pay off a national debt that used to be financed other ways. Why? Because the current version of capitalism has followed More's darkest of paths. Private property is now God, and those that have it, very living divinities. And so bankers are king. And people, the little guys, they do not matter much. Except France doesn't tend to buy that and would rather eat the kidneys of its rulers. But that's probably a different story. And yet it is part of this same story. More asks questions that modernity never answered. What is the point of government? Government will defend itself with high words and great ideals. But in the end, it is the defence of private property. And in defending private property, you are just thinking like thieves, as Plato knew. Worse than that, he says, you are making thieves. For thieves are made by private property as sure as eggs is eggs, because it creates poverty. It creates despair. It eulogizes the wealthy while creating the poor as their necessary shadow. What is the point of this system but to engineer criminality, he asks. A question that surely, these days, where rapists can get elected as presidents, we're no nearer answering. And yes, unless we do, Raphael and the utopians will surely have the last laugh as we destroy ourselves entirely.